Hi. The weather sucks. It's actually the third time in a row that I've had terrible weather while filming a car. It's really annoying, but this is important, people. After 4 years of filming cars, I have finally secured a press car from Citroen. Ladies and gentlemen, say hello to the facelifted Citroen C4. So the Citroen C4 then, this is the third generation of this particular nameplate. The first two generations, some of you might remember, were conventional hatchbacks. But in keeping with the modern car industry times, the third generation of the C4 became a crossover. And look, I'll be honest with you, when these first came out, I kinda strongly disliked them. But now, as time went on, I have started to appreciate this car and actually like it quite a bit. So let's check it out and let's also see what the facelift has brought us. As part of the new facelift, we get a completely redesigned front end that's very similar to what we saw on stuff like the Citroen Oli concept and also the C5 Aircross prototype from 2024. This means that one of the pioneers of upside-down headlights, Citroen, has gone back to regular the right way up headlights. As you can see, these pieces here are the headlights and the daytime running lights, and the piece down below is the turn signal. And you can also see the new Citroen logo, which is very similar to something you might have seen on a 2CV or 2 chevaux from back in the day. It's like a big vertical oval with the two chevrons in the middle. There's also a big sort of intricate grille design down there, and the place where the front fog lights would be if this car had them, it does not. Also, I forgot to mention, we're matching. Next up is the side profile. Please ignore the van. The side profile remains pretty much the same as it was before. God damn, it's loud in here, I'm sorry. The side profile is pretty much the same as it was before, and you can also see that this particular one has steelies and hubcaps. I suppose it's a type of cost-cutting measure, but only the top of the line max trim level gets alloy wheels. The rest of them get steelies and hubcaps. Not really the sort of area I would look at for cost-cutting, because everyone has managed, even makers of cheap cars have managed to make alloy wheels work for lower prices, and this is not exactly a cheap car, but we'll let it slide. Generally, however, the side profile of the C4 is the same. By the way, I completely forgot to mention, despite telling you that we're matching, I didn't tell you the name of this color, and I also didn't tell you that this color is new for the facelifted C4. And finally, the rear end, which is also pretty heavily redesigned. There's a completely new taillight design, again similar to what we saw on the Citroen Oli and the C5 Aircross prototype. The main taillight beams themselves are LEDs. The turn signals on this one are halogen bulbs, but they are LEDs on the top of the line model. You can also see in the bumper 2 exhaust pipes. They are real, and they also denote which powertrain this particular car has. And also you can see the Citroen inscription on the back, of course, spelled out, as is so trendy nowadays. There's no badge on the rear anymore. There used to be, there isn't now. You can also, from this angle as well, you can see one of the C4's most standout design features, which is the fact that it's a coupe crossover and that it has a spoiler splitting the rear window in two. And I know you're wondering about the visibility, and we'll get to that. There's also, gotta move the angle slightly so I can show you. I really like what they've done with the rear quarter window because it tapers into, you can see my hand. The rear quarter window there tapers into the rear spoiler, and it all kind of creates a continuous illusion, which I think is a really nice little piece of attention to detail. So what do I think of the C4's design? Well, as I said before, I really was not a fan of this whole design when it first came out back in 2020. But it has grown on me a lot since then. And honestly, I think this is a charming little car. It has a lot of presence, surprisingly, even though it's not exactly big dimensions. It's not exactly a big car, but it has a lot of presence, and it looks cool, and it's interesting, and it'll definitely turn heads. I'm not sure if it'll do that in this color, especially against this hideous rainy background, but in general, the C4 will steal a few heads wherever you go, and it's generally a lovely little piece of design that I think looks even better now that we've had a facelift. Now that we're done talking about the design, let's move on to practicality. First, the key fob, which is the same as it was before, except for the new badge, and it's basically the same sort of key fob that the PSA group and Stellantis have been rolling with for about 15 years now. It has it's a switchblade key, and it has 3 buttons on it. There's lock, there's lights to find the car in a parking lot, and there's unlock. So let's move into the cargo area. I should mention as well that the C4 is indeed a hatchback, like that. Ta-da! Cargo area. And it's surprisingly spacious, actually. So this cargo area, equipped like this, comes in at 380 liters of space, which is plenty spacious, and the opening is surprisingly very practical considering it's a coupe SUV. You get 2 little hooks on either side, you get some illumination, some tethering points in there, and of course you can fold down the rear seats, which earns you 1,250 liters of space, which is also pretty excellent. And if you look in here, they've given you a lovely little dedicated spot to keep the warning triangle. Awesome. Once you're done, you just grab on that, and you can use the rear spoiler as a little assistance. What about space in the back? I feel like crying because I'm about to ruin the floor mats, but helpfully the dealership installed all-weather floor mats. They thought of everything you see. So, backseat room in the C4 is perfectly solid. I mean, okay, the headroom is a tad bit, well, not very roomy because of the sloped roofline, but because there's a lot of leg room here, both of these seats are in my driving position, I should say. Stats. And there's plenty of leg room here, so if you need to, you can just scooch a little bit down and you should have no problem. The seats do need a little bit more lateral support though. And as for the middle seat, you do have a hump in the floor. I don't know why you can't get this car with all-wheel drive, at least not yet, but see the middle seat here, footwells seem to be pretty spacious. Yes, this, what the hell, man? Why did it turn on now? The stupid illumination back here just turned on for no reason. Anyway, yes, it's perfectly doable short journeys in the middle seat of the C4. You also get some storage, actually 2 different types of storage, a smaller one and a larger one there. You get your own climate vents, and down there is a single USB port. No center console in the middle seat, unfortunately. I'm not sure if that's available on the top of the line model, but on this one, you don't have that. And finally, let's get into the front. No keyless entry on this one, so we're just gonna do it the normal way. And there's your interior. This seat fabric and seat upholstery is consistent on all of the trim levels. It's just that in the max trim level, this is all leather, whereas in here it's partially cloth and some leather-like materials here. And bam, interior. Let's get in. And now we're inside the C4. No keyless entry means no keyless start either. So let's do this. First thing that greets you, well, one of the first things that greets you in the new C4 is the steering wheel, which, to my knowledge and memory, is exactly the same as it was before. It just has the new Citroen logo in the middle. But everything else, the shape, this giant glossy third spoke here, is all the same as it was before. You got your cruise controls on this side and your media controls on the other side, and a little bit of bright work here, which looks rather nice. The bottom spoke doesn't need to be glossy, but okay. And some grip extensions here, and it's all very nice, high-quality leather. And in the middle, we have the horn, which predictably sounds like this. The Citroen C4, this particular one, sends power to the wheels through an 8-speed automatic transmission. And if you've seen my videos, or if you've been around Stellantis, modern Stellantis vehicles, this setup you will immediately recognize. You push this little electronic switch all the way down into drive, halfway up or down for neutral, and all the way up for reverse, which brings up your backup camera, which they seem to have ripped off an old Nokia phone from like 2008. It's super low resolution. Not sure what's up with that, but okay. You also get rear parking sensors on this one. And for park, you just push the P there, and you're in park. There's also an M for manual mode, which you control through these paddle shifters mounted on the steering wheel. And there's your drive mode selector, which we'll get to. I'm sorry about the exploded dynamic range, but infotainment system. It's mounted on this nice big pedestal here, and if you've seen my review of the Peugeot 208, this is the exact same system. It's more like a media center than it is a, full-on infotainment system. The fully loaded C4 has a bigger screen and a slightly high-resolution screen as well, but this is all the same setup as you've seen on stuff like the Peugeot 208 and other EMP1 vehicles from Stellantis that are on the EMP1 platform. And it's all very simple. You got your climate controls there, you got some shortcuts for car and home, and you can mess around with different vehicle settings here. You got your media, and you got your phone. If there's a connected device, this will take you straight to the dial pad, and your car settings. And you also have a big and rather nice volume control here. It's very nice, it feels good. But this is a pretty simple infotainment system. It's fine, it's responsive. I prefer the UI on the C4 here, but it's all, as in the colors and the use of fonts and things like that. But generally, it's the same old tried and true infotainment system, with one pretty major exception. Surprisingly, wireless Apple CarPlay works flawlessly. I've never had that happen before on cars equipped with this system or the one very similar to it, so a good job to Citroen for that one. Moving further down, we got two big climate vents, the hazards, and your power locks. And over here, physical climate controls. You can't get this on this car's twin, the Peugeot 2008. The Opel Mokka still has physical AC controls, and the setup is exactly the same as it is in those cars. You get three big dials. These are for your temperature for either side. That one's for the fan speed. You got your heated seat, recirc air, front defrost, rear defrost, and the climate menu in the infotainment system, and the passenger heated seat. And you're probably wondering, why do you need the climate menu if you have all of these? And you're probably wondering, why do you need a climate menu in the screen when you have physical controls? Because you still need the screen to adjust the zones. Slightly unfortunate, but because of all of the physical controls that you do have, I'm forgiving pretty much everything here. In there, you have a little storage area for a mobile device. There's probably a wireless charger here on the max trim level, not on this one. USB-C for Apple CarPlay purposes, and a USB-A for charging purposes. Some extra storage in there where I kept my lens cap from my camera. A 12-volt outlet. Center console, which is covered in piano black for some reason. It shouldn't be, but we'll let them off. The electronic parking brake, and, well, cup holders, but we'll get to that. And that pretty much covers the center control stack in the C4, so let's move on to what's in front of the driver here. So I'll be perfectly honest with y'all, this is kind of a strange setup. So you have this piece of the dash kind of wrapping around the screen, and this other side as well. It's like a tunnel that leads to the tiny gauge cluster screen there. It actually makes sense and it looks fine in real life, but because of the way the camera's blowing up all the exposures and stuff and the shadows, it looks a little weird. But this tiny little screen shows you everything you need to know. Currently, it's displaying the speed and the speed limit, the gear, which part of the lighting system is on, your remaining range on this tank of fuel, how much fuel you have left in a different form, and the odometer is on this side. It looks white on video, but it's actually gray. The color scheme in the background, the blue, cannot be changed, at least not on this one. And you also get a smattering of warning lights here and there. If you don't want to see the dials, which by the way show the coolant temperature and the revs, you press the button at the end of the turn signal stalk. That allows you to see between the computer, or what we call the trip data, so fuel consumption and different things like that, or you can have the minimum display, which just gets rid of everything on the bottom half and shows you only this information. And that's it, it's pretty simple. The button on the wiper stalk, in typical Stellantis fashion, controls, or rather brings up your trip data. And if you hold it down on one of these long-term trip data displays, you can reset the data. Simple stuff. It works exactly the same sort of way in my Citroen C6, and indeed, it has the same stalks. Sadly, the C4 did not get the new stalks that Stellantis is using, but that's fine, these will get the job done. Steering wheel, you already saw that. Paddle shifters, you already saw. Over here, you have the headlight leveling switch, and you also have a button that you have to hold down to disable lane keep assist, which is useful because the lane keep assist system got a little confused while I was driving this car, although that had nothing to do with the system itself. It had more to do with the fact that the lanes were not marked clearly, but we'll let that slide. You also have another climate vent here, and I just noticed all of them have little wheels to open and close them. They just don't like to move very much. But yes, all of them are opened and closed using little wheels. So I'm glad Citroen didn't cut costs on that one. So that was all of the interior controls and content in the Citroen C4. Well, there's also the rear view mirror manually dimming, and the overhead lighting controls, which are also unchanged for the past 15 years or so, and the sun visors, which contain mirrors that are not illuminated, unfortunately. But in terms of content, shut up, wipers. That's about it. So let's move on to quality and storage. Quality is excellent. Admittedly, there are a few little areas where there's harder plastic. They're not exactly little, I misspoke, but the top half of the dash here is covered in soft touch plastics. All of the switches and the buttons feel nice. They're good to the touch. The screen is mounted very firmly and very nicely, and everything just has a nice little feeling of quality about it. It's nice that even though this is not the flagship model in the Citroen lineup, they paid attention to such things. Also, really quickly need to mention, we will talk about this in the driving section as well, but the driving position in this car is absolutely perfect. But more on that in a second. Anyway, in terms of storage, you get a little door pocket here with plenty of storage for a large bottle. That little mobile device storage area that I showed you, some extra storage in there. You got 2 cup holders in here, and you have a sliding center console. And a very decently, where's the button? Very decently sized glove box. And they have a separate little area for a sunglasses case or a glasses case of any kind. Hopefully some of the dealership staff already left their case in here, so I can demonstrate that for you. So overall, the interior of the Citroen C4 is actually a pretty excellent place to be. Finally, the engine. Well, under the hood of this car is typical Stellantis fare, really. It's a 1.2-liter turbo 3-cylinder with 130 horsepower, which sends its power to the front wheels through an 8-speed torque converter automatic transmission. The diesel engine is gone. We have this and we have the hybrid. And interestingly, you can get this engine on the base model. The base model is hybrid only with either 110 horsepower or 145, and that sends its power to the wheels through a 6-speed dual-clutch automatic transmission, and the electric motor lives inside that gearbox. This engine also puts out 230 newton meters of torque. 0 to 100 kph should take about 9 seconds, and the top speed is 200 kilometers an hour or 124 miles an hour. Now, I've driven cars with this engine thousands of times, so let's see what it's like if it's a different experience in the C4. So let's get into it then. What is it like to be behind the wheel of the Citroen C4? And I know I'm going to have a lot of people asking about the ride quality, because that's something that Citroen tends to be pretty good at. But we'll get to that, don't you worry. First thing I'd like to say is this is the first time I've driven a vehicle with this particular powertrain on an extended road trip outside of the city. And I have to say I'm pretty impressed with the 1.2 PureTech. It actually can hold its own on the highway. I always thought it would be a little bit weak. I mean, we do have 130 horsepower, which is fine, but I always thought it would be a little bit weak, a little bit struggling, if you will, but that wasn't the case at all. It was fantastic on the highway, but we'll get to that also. Let's start with the town driving, because this is important for this type of vehicle. The simplest and best way that I can describe the C4's driving experience in the city is, well, in any environment, but in this case the city, is stress-free. There isn't a little sensor that's watching you pay attention to the road or anything like that. It's all quiet and comfy and relaxed. This is, I think, the quietest of the EMP1 crossovers that I've driven so far, from what I can remember, that is, anyway. And as for the ride quality, well, I'm not sure what I was expecting, because I don't know if I mentioned this earlier in the video, but the Citroen C4 does have Citroen's advanced comfort suspension, which basically means there are cushions above and below the springs in the suspension. And it doesn't ride like a DS or a C6. I can personally tell you this because I have a C6, but it is actually pretty comfy, especially for being on pretty relatively big 17-inch wheels, relative to the vehicle size, I mean, of course. But overall, the town driving was excellent, and I love how the interior is mostly physical controls and the screens aren't too big or too bright. The only reservation I have is that the backup camera was stupidly low resolution, and also the rear visibility, which, while not as bad as I thought it was going to be, that bar that's splitting the rear window in half is definitely kind of gets in the way. But other than that, it's all well and fine. Oh yeah, yes, less piano black plastic as well, please. As for the highway, as I said, excellent. First time I had driven the 130 PureTech engine on an extended road trip type of situation. You're also seeing on the screen right now some lovely driving B-roll taken by Mrs. Korr. I was actually pretty impressed on the highway. There's plenty of power. Because you have 8 gears in this model, fuel consumption was a doozy. About 5.5 liters on the highway and about roughly 7.5 in the city. Sometimes 8 because I tend to disable auto start stop. But regardless, pretty good fuel economy for not being a hybrid and being a regular torque converter automatic transmission. Those like to use a lot of fuel, as we know. So on the highway, great stuff. It rides very well on the highway as well. Excellent sound insulation. There was a little bit of wind noise and a little bit of road noise, but nothing too bad. It was all smooth sailing. And as for dynamic driving, well, this is a Citroen and that's completely missing the point. But in case you do need to take corners with a little more vigor, not sure why you would want to, but if you do, then the C4 is fine. It's not gonna set the world on fire by any means, but it can hold its own as well. There's not a whole lot of lean, and there's some pretty responsive steering as well. And that's the Citroen C4. I won't lie to you, when I first saw this car in 2020, I really didn't like it because I was 18 years old and a little more immature. I still am immature, make no mistake. I was just more immature then. And I always thought, why is it a coupe crossover? It should have been a hatchback like the old one. And while a C4 hatchback would be cool, this facelifted C4 is awesome. I love this car. I really do. I think it's really cool and interesting and different, and it drives really well, and it has great features. And it's also pretty good value. So it stands to reason that the Citroen C4, the facelifted Citroen C4, gets a score of 9 out of 10. Thank you so much for watching this video, everybody. If you liked it, be sure to hit like and subscribe to the channel. Also follow me on Blue Sky. There will be a link in the description as always. And don't forget to follow along with the community tab for upcoming videos. Anyway, see you later. Bye.